This is a sports catastrophe production. Hey there, hello there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another sports catastrophe on this day. And on this day, April 26, 1966, an era in the NBA ends as Red Auerbach decides to hang him up as coach of the legendary Boston Celtics. So Red Auerbach was a legend, to say the least. He would actually coach Washington in the Basketball Association of America, which was the predecessor to the NBA. They got to the finals, but lost to Minneapolis. But then the BAA would merge with the National Basketball League to become the NBA. And Auerbach wanted to help Washington out, but they said no, so he decided to resign and become assistant coach of the Duke men's basketball team. Anyway, Auerbach would actually work as assistant coach of Duke, the future All-American, who was good in college basketball, but was better known for his baseball prowess as shortstop of the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1960 championship season, Dick Rote. So anyway, Tri-Cities. Yes, there was a team that the Tri-Cities Blackhawks were a team in the NBA at that time that played in 3 different cities, if I can remember correctly. Well, I know Moline, Illinois was one of them. Yeah, they were the Tri-Cities. Moline, Illinois, Rock Island, Illinois, and Davenport, Iowa. So it was weird. You play games in 3 different cities for one thing, and then you basically play in 2 different states. So anyway, he was allowed to try to help the Blackhawks out, and he did. They were 1 game below 500. But when the owner of the Blackhawks traded Auerbach's favorite player, Auerbach decided to resign. But before 1950, the Boston Celtics were struggling. They were financially strapped, and they were struggling. At one time, remember, the Boston Celtics have been Boston's the golden team of the NBA, but they've had struggled earlier on. Anyway, so Walter Brown, who was owner of the Celtics, said to sports writers who should be there. And the sports writer said Auerbach should do it. So Walter Brown complied. Auerbach made some big moves in 1950 in the NBA draft. He actually snubbed Bob Cousy in the NBA draft, which was shocking. Boston was happy to have him because Bob Cousy played close to Boston at Holy Cross. And Auerbach said that Cousy lacked the poise necessary to make his team. He would also draft Chuck Cooper, becoming the first black player to be drafted by any NBA team. The Celtics were consistent of Ed McCauley and Cousy. Well, Cousy refused to report to the Blackhawks, which Auerbach left. So Cousy ended up, he didn't want to go to the Tri-Cities because, he didn't want to play in 3 different cities. And then the Chicago Stags folded, so the Celtics somehow in some way got Bob Cousy, and it worked for the Celtics. Auerbach made another gigantic move in 1956. Before the draft, he wanted Bill Russell. So he decided to trade Ed McCauley, who was a Boston mainstay at center, and Cliff Hagan, formerly of Kentucky, to the rival St. Louis Hawks, who actually had the city after Tri-Cities moved to St. Louis and got the rights to Bill Russell. So Auerbach did that. And Auerbach was great for the Celtics. And that started the Celtics on their dynasty ways from 1957 to 1966. They went to every NBA final. It was amazing. I mean, Auerbach would lead the Celtics to win the title every freaking year as it serves. Auerbach, by 1966, said he was done for. That's it. That's it, and all that. When they lost Game 1 of the finals to the Lakers, he named Bill Russell to be his successor. So Bill Russell would be player coach and all that. Auerbach won the title in Game 7, and then Auerbach left on top of the world. And it was like amazing and all that. Auerbach would become the GM, whereas Russell would be the coach. Russell would help win 2 more titles as player coach, 68 and 69. Auerbach rebuilt the Celtics with true draft picks, getting Dave Cowens, JoJo White, Paul Westphal, and Don Chaney. The Celtics were still a good team in the 1970s, but then they went into a tailspin and all that. He decided to trade Silas and Westphal away because they wanted salary increases, making them higher than Dave Cowens, and Auerbach didn't think that way. Anyway, Westphal went to Phoenix, and funny thing was that the Suns and Celtics faced each other in the 1976 NBA Finals, but Boston won. The Celtics were not doing that well. Rumors were circulating that Red Auerbach was done for after 1978, but he said that I'm not going anywhere and all that. Auerbach drafted Bird in the 1978 NBA draft, even though Bird was Bird still had 1 more year college eligibility left. You could do that. So Auerbach knew he had to wait for Bird and all that. Bird became the highest paid Celtic as a rookie, and Auerbach knew he had to pay him. Auerbach also did a great job as the steal of the century in 1980. He convinced Golden State to trade him the number 3 pick and Robert Chief Parrish in exchange for the number 1 pick and the number 13 pick. So the Celtics had the number 1 pick, but they traded it to Golden State. Golden State drafted Joe Barry-Caro, who basically made Warriors fans give him another name. Joe barely cares. Auerbach, with the number 3 pick, took Kevin McHale, the player he wanted in the draft. And that front court of Parrish, McHale, and Bird was one of the greatest front courts in NBA history, bar none. Auerbach knew what he was doing, and he got 83 titles, 81, 84, and 86. Auerbach gave up his GM stuff in 1984 and became president and vice chairman of the Boston Celtics. All that. Auerbach was the guy who figured that Len Bias would be the best guy out there. So with the number 2 pick in the 1986 draft, he got Len Bias. Sadly, though, Bias would not play for Boston. He wouldn't play in the NBA at all because he freaking died of a cocaine overdose 2 days later, which shocked the world. All that. And Auerbach also saw Reggie Lewis, a Celtics star player, die in 1993. So, anyway, Auerbach loved his cigar smoking and all that. Here's an icon. Auerbach would die of a heart attack at age 89 in 2006. But his legacy is bar none. Like, are you serious and all that? Boston retired his number 2. Well, I know he didn't play for the Boston Celtics, but he wore number 2 because the Celtics retired his number 2 for Auerbach because he was the second biggest Celtic of all time. Number 1 is the owner, Walter Brown. And that's why Boston has his number 1 jersey and all that retired. Red Auerbach was a coach's coach. He was basically the Bill Belichick of the NBA. Well, that and also the Bill Belichick with winning all those championships and all that. Seemingly just staying year after year. Red Auerbach is Celtic pride, and don't you forget it. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.